Hi friends. So along with Odin and Thor, Loki is probably one of the best known Norse mythological figures today, greatly popularized by the Marvel comic books and cinematic universe, where he is presented as the adopted son of Odin and half-brother of Thor, with whom he has a conflicted love-hate relationship. He is also presented as a trickster and shapeshifter, taking on the form of other people. But who was Loki really? In this video we'll take a look at who the Norse peoples believed Loki to be, and the role he played in Norse mythology, seeing if pop culture today does him justice, or whether there is more to know about this trickster. Loki is the trickster god of Norse mythology, who has the ability to change his shape and sex, and who occupies a highly ambivalent and unique position among the gods, giants, and the other spiritual beings that populate Norse religion. His father is the giant Farbauti, while his mother is Lovi, or Nol, who could be a goddess, giantess, or something else entirely. The surviving sources are silent on this point. Loki's brothers are Helblindi and Bileister, who are also giants. Despite his parentage, Loki is included among the Aesir, the tribe of gods that include Odin, chief of the gods, Frigg, Odin's wife, Tyr, the god of war, and Thor, the god of thunder. But while they are considered custodians of order, Loki brings havoc and can possibly be seen as a god of chaos. And so Loki is often represented as the companion of the gods Odin and Thor, helping them with his clever plans, but sometimes causing embarrassment and difficulty for both them and himself. He also appears as the enemy of the gods, entering their banquet uninvited and demanding their drink. He is playful, malicious, and helpful, but is always irreverent and nihilistic. For example, in the tale of the Kidnapping of Idunn, Loki, by his recklessness, ends up in the hands of a furious giant Thiazi, who threatens to kill Loki unless he brings him the goddess Idunn. Loki complies to save his life, and then finds himself in the awkward position of having the gods threaten him with death unless he rescues Idunn. He agrees to this request for the same base motive, shifting his shape into that of a falcon and carrying the goddess back to Asgard in his talons. Thiazi pursues him desperately in the form of an eagle, but, having almost caught up with Loki as he nears his destination, the gods light a fire around the perimeter of their fortress. The flames catch Thiazi and burn him to death, while Idunn and Loki reach the halls of the gods safely. Loki ultimately comes to the aid of the gods, but only to rectify a calamity for which he himself is responsible. This theme is repeated in numerous tales, such as in the creation of Thor's hammer and the fortification of Asgard. After Thiazi's death, the giant's daughter, Skadi, arrives in Asgard, demanding restitution for the slaying of her father. One of her demands is that the gods make her laugh, something which only Loki is able to do. To accomplish this, he ties one end of a rope to the beard of a goat, and the other end to his testicles. Both he and the goat squawk and squeal as one pulls one way, and the other pulls the other way. Eventually he falls over in Skadi's lap, and the giantess can't help but laugh at such an absurd spectacle. Here, Loki once again comes to the aid of the gods, but simply by being silly and outlandish, not by accomplishing any feat that a Viking-age Scandinavian would have found to be particularly honorable. Loki alternately helps both the gods and the giants, depending on which course of action is most pleasurable and advantageous to him at the time. During Ragnarok, when the gods and giants engage in their ultimate struggle and the cosmos is destroyed, Loki joins the battle on the side of the giants. According to one Old Norse poem, he even captains the ship Naglfar, which brings many of the giants to their battle with the gods. When the battle for the world is fought, he and the god Heimdall mortally wound each other. Loki is perhaps best known for his role in the death of Baldr. After the death of the beloved god Baldr is prophesied, Baldr's mother, Frigg, secures a promise from every living thing to not harm her son, but she does not obtain such an oath from the mistletoe, which she thinks too small and safe a thing to harm Baldr. Upon discovering this omission, Loki carves a mistletoe spear, places it in the hands of the blind god Herder, and instructs him to throw it at Baldr. Herder, not knowing the origin of the weapon, complies, and Baldr is impaled and dies. The god Hermod rides Sleipnir to the underworld and implores Hel to release Baldr, pointing out how beloved he is by all living things. Hel retorts that if this is so, then it shouldn't be difficult to compel every being to weep for Baldr, and, should this happen, the dead god would be released from the grave. Every living thing does indeed cry for Baldr's return, with one sole exception, a frost-hearted giantess named Tok, who is almost certainly Loki in disguise. So Baldr must remain in Hell. For his many crimes against them, the gods eventually forge a chain from the entrails of Loki's son Narfi, and tie him down to 3 rocks inside a cave. A venomous serpent sits above him, dripping poison onto him. Loki's faithful and loving wife Sigyn sits at his side with a bowl to catch the venom, but when the bowl becomes full, she has to leave her husband's side to empty it. When this happens, the drops of venom that fall onto him cause him to writhe in agony, and these convulsions create earthquakes. And in this state he lies until breaking free at Ragnarok. An interesting variant of the tale of Loki's binding comes from the medieval Danish historian Saxo Grammaticus. In his History of the Danes, Thor, on one of his many journeys to Jotunheim, the homeland of the giants, finds a giant named Utgarda Loki, meaning Loki of the Utgard. Utgarda Loki is bound in exactly the same manner as that in which Loki is bound in the previous tale, which comes from Icelandic sources. So it seems that even the Scandinavians held conflicting views on whether Loki was a god, a giant, or something else entirely. Loki is the parent of many children. By the giantess Angerboda, Loki is the father of Hel, the goddess of the underworld. Jormungandr, the great serpent who slays Thor during Ragnarok, and Fenrir, the wolf who bites off one of the hands of Tyr and who kills Odin during Ragnarok. With his proper wife Sigyn, he also has a son named Nari or Narfi, whose name might mean corpse. Loki is also the mother of Sleipnir, Odin's horse, whom Loki gave birth to after shapeshifting into a mare and courting the stallion Svadilfari. For the centuries that Norse mythology has been a subject of scholarly study, they have been unable to explain the meaning of Loki's name in any convincing way. For some time, it was thought that the name Loki derives from the Old Norse Logi, meaning fire, which gave rise to the idea that Loki was also a god of fire. But while Loki was destructive and unpredictable like fire, the similarity between the two words was probably incidental, as Loki is never associated with fire in Norse mythology. Recently, in his research into Nordic folklore from periods more recent than the Viking Age, philologist Alder Hyde noticed that Loki often appears in contexts that liken him to a knot on a thread. In fact, in later Icelandic usage, the common noun Loki even means knot or tangle. Spiders are sometimes referred to as Loki in a metaphorical sense, and their webs are compared to the fishing nets, which are made from a series of knots and loops that Loki crafts in certain surviving Viking Age myths. From all of this, the most straightforward meaning of Loki's name would seem to be knot or tangle. This proposed meaning of Loki's name resonates with his role in Norse mythology in 2 ways. First, it points to his role as a maker of nets, both literal fish nets and metaphorical nets in the form of his cunning schemes that trap the gods in perilous situations. Second, it could indicate his being the knot in the otherwise straight thread of the gods and their world, the fatal flaw that ultimately brings about their demise. Loki's status in pre-Christian Scandinavia remains somewhat obscure. The medieval sources from which comes much of what is known of him provide no evidence of a cult, unlike for other Norse deities, and the name Loki does not appear in place names. A possible explanation of this can be that his character was the antithesis of traditional Norse values of honor, loyalty, and the like, and he is ultimately a traitor to the Norse divinities. But in truth, Loki is neither for or against the gods. Like the trickster figures in other mythologies, he is neither good nor evil, choosing instead to be a partisan of disorder itself, a figure who tests boundaries and challenges conventions. His chaotic inconsistency reminds believers that the boundaries between good and evil are far more tenuous than they suspect. As always, Thank you so very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please share, like and subscribe. Till next time, bye bye.